When most gamers think about selling games, usually one of the first things this will remind them of is regret. If you have a game that you sold at some point and you've decided now that you would like to have that game back again, well, you've got yourself two problems. First problem, you don't have the game anymore. Second problem, that game is probably really expensive now, making the prospect of having to buy that game back a bitter pill to swallow. All that being said, I don't think selling games is necessarily a bad thing though. After all, I'm a huge supporter of the idea of consolidating your collection, and the best way to do that, that's right, selling off some of your games. Plus, sometimes selling off your games isn't necessarily a choice. Sometimes you have to sell those games because you need money for something really important, aka bills, stuff like that. So in a situation like that, I would say that a pretty rational, calculated decision is being made, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we can be making very rash decisions when we sell off games. You think to yourself, nah, I don't need this game anymore, I might as well sell it and make some money. And that's the thing, because these games are worth money, sometimes that dollar amount is just way too tempting to not sell the game. But when it comes to irrationally selling off some of your games, perhaps there's no more irrational situation than when you sold games off as a kid. Oh yeah, all sorts of memories are flooding back into your head now. Now, selling your games for roughly what they're worth is one thing, but selling them for way less than they're worth is quite another. Best way to do this? Sell your games to the Underworld. And by the Underworld, of course, I mean GameStop or a place like that. Among some of the greatest experiences in life, such as hearing nails on a chalkboard or sharing an elevator fart ride with a group of strangers, we have selling your games into a game store where the amount of money that they give you is equal to roughly 1/3 or perhaps even less of what they will turn around and sell it to the next sucker who walks through the door for. And sure, part of this is just that businesses need to make money, and so that's just how it works, but it doesn't change the fact that you're still getting screwed. Plus, the table is set perfectly for kids to fall victim to this kind of thing. Just think about it. Most kids don't have a lot of resources for getting money, so if they can sell some of their games for money, that is an opportunity. But hold on a second, aren't kids known for being really rational? No, that's the last thing they're known for. And you think your parents are gonna stop you from doing that? Yeah, right, they're glad to see that crap out of the house. In a lot of cases, they would even make your parents sign for you in order to be able to trade them in. I mean, if only they had known. Signing away what my child is gonna really miss in 20 years or so when they're a rational adult and they long for some of the greatest memories of their childhood, sign away and see ya later. Now, maybe you did have parents who stopped you from doing that, and in that case, I would say you have amazing parents and you should be very thankful for your parents doing that. With all this in mind, there really weren't very many good ways to sell your games back then. I mean, stuff like eBay wasn't around, Facebook Marketplace, forget about it, Craigslist, that was years off. There really wasn't a whole lot that you could do. I really don't remember kids selling games to each other at school or something like that. And if they did, it probably wouldn't have been for anywhere near what they were actually worth. Plus, buying video games at school just has problems written all over it, if you ask me. I can just imagine some kid buying a game from another kid, then beating that kid up, taking the money back, and then he's got the money and the game. But if we go ahead and fast forward things out of the 80s and 90s to nowadays, we've got all sorts of methods for selling games. And with that, let's start with the most common way, eBay. Naturally, eBay has developed a reputation for a lot of predatory, price-gouging jerks who try to get on there and rip people off. But with that being said, there are still some of us who both buy games and sell games in a responsible and smart manner. The first rule when it comes to buying or selling games online is to check what games are actually selling for, not what people are asking for. This cannot be stressed enough. All of those price gouging idiots, they put prices that are way higher than what the game is actually selling for. And in most cases, those listings just sit there forever. But the problem is sometimes people will just look at those prices that people are asking for and be like, well, this must be what it's going for. And so then they try to list their listing for that crazy, ridiculous high price. Not good. So here's my advice when it comes to selling games online. What you want to do is first see what the game has been selling for on average, and then take your price and move it just a little bit below that. Now, what this is going to do is, first of all, probably get your game to sell a little quicker, which is always nice. And the second thing is that if you go too low, you can go even lower than that. But if you go too low, what's probably going to happen is some price gouger is just going to snatch it up and then try to flip that thing for a whole bunch more money. Whereas if you go just a little bit below, it's not going to be worth it for the price gouger to bother with it, and instead you'll be giving a fair price to somebody who probably really wants the game. But this is assuming you'd want to sell any of your games in the first place, which is going to vary from individual to individual. The best advice I could really give for this is, if you liked a game at any one point, you're probably gonna like it again. Usually what happens when people sell a game and they regret it is that they're kind of not in the mood for it for a while, and so they go, I guess I'll just sell it off and who cares. Then that burning desire strikes them at some point in the future and they're like, oh man, why did I sell that? And then they don't have it and they're screwed. Whereas if there's a game in your collection that you don't like and you've never liked it, odds are you're probably not going to at some point in the future. Although there are some weird circumstances where that can happen. I'm just saying, in those situations, you're generally safer than in the situations where you did like the game at some point. Alright, so for this video's question, I'm guessing that a lot of you are going to want to talk about games that you sold and regret having done so, but what I really want to hear is actually a game that you sold and don't regret it. You feel good about having sold it. For me personally, it's actually Snatcher on Sega CD. Now, what I did was I bought the game, played it, and then sold it for what I bought it for. Sure, the game is worth way the heck more now than it was at the time that I sold it, but I don't care. I got what I needed to out of the game. I feel good about it. I had a good experience with that game. Alright, so leave your comments down below, and I will see ya in the next video.
He's the retro bird, yeah, and he's talking about video games. He's the retro